Welcome in, you guys, to another One Piece video. This time, we gotta talk about the situation here in Elbaf. We just got revealed to Loki's massive, literally, devil fruit, and he is accompanied by Luffy and Ragdir. It is quite the trio, an unstoppable force, if I do say so myself. And when you look at who's on the opposing team here in Elbaf, St. Somers and St. Killingham, it's like, all right, I would not be shocked if Luffy and Loki 1, 2, or 3 shot these dudes. Sorry guys, hey, I am a God Knight fan. I root for the boys, but I'm also realistic. St. Somers, at the beginning of the arc, mentioned how he doesn't want to exactly fight a Yonko. Gunko, even, before we had the whole Princess Shuri reveal, talked about how she fears Sun God Nika. The God Knights do not want to run the fade with these boys. And hell, we saw what happened to the strongest God Knight 14 years ago when Loki showed up. So when it comes to the God Knights, I think they are absolutely cooked in these matchups if they do happen. So now, because of that, we have to turn our attention towards their leader, their master, Imu. So, is Imu enough to beat back Loki and or Luffy? Will Imu look good by the end of Elbaf or no? Could Luffy and Loki potentially beat Imu down and Imu has to flee? You know exactly what I did in light of these questions, these theories. I held a poll about it. And here we go. How well will Imu-Gunko do against the double L combo in Elbaf? One thing we have to remember is that right now, Imu is severely nerfed. 1, this is not their real body. And 2, the body they are possessing is fighting back. Princess Shuri is trying to get control of her body. She's trying to save the Straw Hats. She's trying to help Brook out. So that right there could be the reason why Imu doesn't win on this island. That could be the reason why Imu gets sent home. But until that happens, if there is a 1v2 scenario between Gunko versus Luffy and Loki, would Imu actually be able to keep up? Personally, I think so. We haven't seen Imu throw hands yet, right? We haven't seen their taijutsu skills, but I'd like to imagine Imu has that dog in them. And if they don't have taijutsu skills, then we could always turn back to their magic book. We saw what Imu was able to do to Brogy's wrist. Hell, I know this sounds crazy, but that shotgun that Imu whipped out might be one of the strongest guns out there in the world. I mean, dead ass, dude. The ability to one-shot a giant's wrist off is crazy. So if Imu has more weapons in his arsenal, he could be that guy. Like, imagine he's just a military man. Like, he whips out a pistol next, a revolver, a bazooka. He could go crazy with weapons if he's not a taijutsu user, right? Sorry, I keep on saying taijutsu like it's Naruto, but you get what I mean, right? Can he throw some fists with the boys? I hope so. So yes, he could whip out more guns. He could be a fist-to-fist master. And on top of all that, we do have to remember that Imu should have battle experience against Luffy and Loki already. Imu has been around the block, brother. They are from the Void Century. And with that being the case, that means that they fought Joy Boy. They fought the pinnacle of power, the pinnacle of the sun god, Joy Boy. And we saw what Joy Boy was able to do back on Egghead. They unleashed Conqueror's Haki so strong, it sent the Gorosei back. Yes, Imu was on his knees as well, but Imu fought that in the past. Whether they won or lost, that is what they witnessed. Alongside that, we can also assume that Imu knows about Loki's power. Maybe he's going to be shocked that Loki has the devil fruit, but he definitely knows what this dragon is all about because they potentially fought it again 900 years ago. So maybe Luffy and Loki are still mastering their fruits and Imu takes advantage of that. Maybe Imu looks at Luffy and he says, oh, that attack? Well, let me tell you, Joy Boy did this and it was way stronger. Oh, Loki, you hitting me with this blast? Well, let me tell you, you haven't even come close to mastering your fruit. Imu could literally drop those lines and it would not be shocking. Imu knows everything about the world. Imu has quite literally been there and done that. So I would like it if Imu schooled them. Of course, I do think that Imu will be sent off of Elbaf because of Gunko. Like maybe we sever the connection or Brook plays some music and that severs it. Or maybe Luffy and Loki just conquers blast together and it cuts the Wi-Fi. But until that happens, I do think that Imu will look good. Or at least I hope so. Because getting back to the brass tacks, at the end of the day, there might be 3 options, but right now there's 2 in front of us. The final villain is either Imu or Blackbeard. And whichever one it ends up being, I hope they're strong. I hope they're powerful. And I think it is too soon to make Imu look bad. Yes, like I said, Imu can get sent away. You know, we can cut that connection. But until that happens, I really hope that Imu has that dog in him. And the best thing about this is that if Imu does beat back Luffy and Loki to some extent, that could cause Luffy to train more. And I think that is when Luffy is at his best. Whenever he sees that there's a wall to overcome, he trains and trains and trains until he gets new power or until he gets new abilities. And I am all about that. So yeah, personally, I do vote for Imu still being stronger than both of them. We have only seen the beginning of Imu's powers. We've seen Yomi Reversi, we've seen a shotgun, regeneration, and that's it. And guess what? Imu has never really broken a sweat. You know, Imu literally does this and calls it a day. So I do think that Imu is going to be that guy, hopefully. So now, second pick, this one says that it could be a very even battle. Because it's a 2v1, Imu's over here, you know, actually trying and barely keeping up. I think that is fine. And now for the third option, it says that Imu can't do anything against them. And I think this would be the most unfortunate outcome. It would be like the Saint Saturn pick, right? Yes, Saint Saturn, big, scary, regeneration, all that. But at the same time, Saturn didn't really land any blows against Luffy. He landed one eye beam against Luffy, and then that was it. After that, Luffy was dodging, he was laughing, he was spanking his ass, and it's like, okay, hopefully Imu doesn't get mogged on that hard. At least not yet. And now for the fourth option, I just put other. And I generally just put these here in these polls just to see if anybody has any unique ideas. So yes, there you have it. 45% vote for Imu being stronger, 26% for an even battle, 22% for Imu not being able to fight them at all, and then 7% for just question marks. So now on to the comment section. Let's see what people are saying about this right here. Oda will do something we do not expect. I could see that. You know, we're talking about a 1v2 right here, but there is a good chance it could turn into a 2v2. You know, because Loki is so big, maybe Imu creates a monster the same size as Loki. Imu whipped out Yomi Reversi and brought demons out here, right? So who's to say that Imu can't whip out more demons that are the same size as Loki? I think that would be pretty damn cool. Like, for example, the Hellfire Serpent from the mural. Maybe Imu has some pet demons that he could send against Loki. Imu is far stronger on his own, but it's possessing Gunko's body right now, and Gunko is already fighting back. I believe that limits how much power Imu can channel into Gunko's body. That is also true. You know, maybe Gunko's body is the limiter. Not only will Gunko's body send Imu back, but perhaps Imu drops a line and they're like, oh, because this body is so frail, I can only use 10% of my power. That right there sounds like an anime thing to say. Imu in Gunko's body is weaker than Imu, yeah. I mean, that's the thing though, right? If you're saying this, you know, how do you rank this then? Are you saying that because they're in Gunko's body, they end up losing? Or Imu is still stronger, right? I think that's the main thing. That's why I put Imu dash Gunko here. Like, how would they fare against them? If Imu gets defeated here, easily, the agenda piece for the next few months is going to be crazy, yeah. That's the thing too, right? If Imu loses, you know, even if Imu is nerfed, but if Imu loses, I think a lot of people will just straight up not really look forward to this battle. Which, I mean, Imu versus Luffy, dude, that's a fight in the making for 900 years now. I think he has to be strong, dude. Like, even if he's nerfed in Gunko's body, I want him to be strong. You know, we saw how the God Knights have been performing. Yes, they're regenerating, but I would just love it if they had a heavy hitter. Imu and the Knights leave for the Holy Land situation and leaves a Yomi Reversi Loki for Luffy to fight. Could happen. That could happen. Oda can't make Imu look bad before the final war. Imu is honestly such an oddball. They can do anything, and we still have only seen the surface level of power, I think. Yep. I mean, hell, they have an entire grimoire, brother. They have an entire book of magic, and all they've done was whip out a shotgun. We need more. We need more. Since we're in the final saga, someone has to give Luffy a challenge on Elbaf, and that is either Imu or Loki. Yeah, I have seen people like pushing the Loki Domi Reversi agenda. I don't mind that. We haven't really seen if Domi Reversi works on anybody with a devil fruit yet, and I think that's a big thing, right? If you have a devil fruit, can you turn into a devil version of yourself? So if Loki does get Domi Reversi'd, we could get that answered once and for all. And of course, there's so many other theories about Domi Reversi as well. So I would just love to learn more about the upper and lower limits of it. Imu says, quote, sit, and Loki sits because his devil fruit is Imu's pet from the olden days. Huh. This is a tough one because Jarl says, on a day when it snows and thunders, a giant beast covers the sky, and then the sun god descends with it. It sounds like the sun god actually had Loki as a pet instead of Imu. So that's my takeaway from it. But of course, we do know that Zoans have a will of their own, so maybe there's something there, but we'll see. Imu only leaves because a holy knight dies elsewhere. Ooh, that'd be crazy. Yeah. Imu looks good, and they don't leave because of Gunko. They leave because somebody dies in the Holy Land. That'd be nuts. And going back to it, but the Holy Land is on fire. So yeah, we don't know who's up there. Maybe they do have the ability to take down one of the God Knights. I think that'd be super cool, but hopefully we see that God Knight fight a little bit. That's my one thing. Hopefully we see the God Knight fight and they just don't die off screen. I'm fine with it being surprise. And then they're like, okay, but going back like the past day or two, here's the God Knight in question that fought Dragon or fought Shanks or somebody. Imu can't leave the house, but is still OP. Luffy and Loki beat anyone together. Huh. It's funny. You say Imu's overpowered, and then you say Luffy and Loki just beat everybody, though. So I would say you're aiming for even battle. I'm confused by where you're trying to go, but I think you're saying that they're even. And that'd be pretty cool. Luffy and Loki, this is something that we knew right when Loki was introduced. But now that we see them together fighting side by side, a lot of people are bringing back the big observation that Luffy's bounty is 3 billion and Loki's bounty is 2.6. And when you combine it, you do get the iconic 5-6, the Go Mu. So, they could literally just be the strongest duo. This says, we need a loss here. We need a training arc for the rest of the Straw Hats to get their shit together. I would love that. This is kind of how I feel. I don't know if we need a training arc per se, but I would just love a training arc. I think that's where I'm at. Because, brother, half of the Straw Hats still do not have basic hockey. I think we need to fix that to some extent. Or, maybe we need to research on how to hurt the Holy Knights without hockey. Just anything for these guys. And genuinely, there's a lot of ways for the Straw Hats to grow here. Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, they could all spar with Loki and Scopper. That would be beautiful. It's kind of like how, what is the Dragon Ball comparison? Goku, Vegeta, and Broly training with Whis and Beerus. That's essentially that right there, brother. And then for Frankie, he could hang out with Vegapunk, hang out with Kuma, go to that 3,000-year-old robot building that we saw. Robin could read more books from O'Hara, hang out with Saul, go to the mural, Harley tech stuff. Chopper could talk to the owl, learn about Elbaf medicine. Brooke could hang out with Princess Shuri if we save her. I think we will. I'm still on board the we save Princess Shuri train and that's why Imu goes home route. So Brooke could hang out with her and maybe learn some Elbaf music. Usopp hangs out with Dory and Brogy. Maybe get some new pop greens here in Elbaf since the plants are a lot bigger. Dude, Elbaf is just a perfect place for us to take a step back and smell the roses. Did I miss a Straw Hat? Jimbei! Oh, dude, Jimbei! There's giant fish here! I almost forgot he was a part of the crew, guys! That just shows how little Jimbei actually does right now. It's kind of sad. Hopefully Jimbei gets his comeuppance soon. I really just hope Jimbei stops putting out fires, even though that's his bread and butter. But yeah, Jimbei, he could go into the waters of Elbaf, because there are giant fish here. Maybe Jimbei could learn something. Hell, even during the Vegapunk broadcast, we saw giant fish in ruins. Maybe that's off the coast of Elbaf. Maybe Jimbei hops in for a dive, he sees some ancient stuff, and he comes back with some big information. Maybe he jumps in the water and he sees Eustace Captain Kidd down there. I think that there's a lot of room for growth here once we send Imu away. Question is, how do we do it? Does Gunko do it? Does somebody at the Holy Land do it? Or do Luffy and Loki do it? That is the big $1 million question. This says, it doesn't even matter if this duo defeats Gunko, because the real one is still playing in his or her flower garden with butterflies. And I have a theory why Imu hides their face. Maybe because while fighting Sun God, he or she got sunburnt, and it remains to this day that is why Imu hates Joy Boy. All right, that's a little bit silly, but it's so silly I could see this being the case. You know, I mean, hey, Imu is like a shadow, right? Shadows in the sun? They don't really work hand in hand, man. I do like the sunburnt route, though. And, you know, speaking of the butterflies, I do like the butterflies that Imu surrounds himself with, dude. The blue butterflies, it kind of has aura. And last we saw the blue butterfly was when Imu did the Lucia Buster attack. Would Imu do that to Elbaf if they lose here? We know that Imu has York and the Mother Flame, so is there a chance after Imu leaves Elbaf that he sends that weapon over and destroys the island? Would it be big enough to destroy Elbaf, though? You know, destroying Lelucia, massive, right? But at the end of the day, that is a human-sized country. Elbaf is the land of giants. It's probably 100 times bigger than Lelucia. So maybe that's why Imu doesn't do it. Yeah, you know, I always like the idea of Imu destroying islands he doesn't like or islands where he loses. But maybe he can't do it here because Elbaf is just that damn big. That's an interesting thought, huh? You know, Imu just throws up their hands like Pain and just says, Lelucia Buster, or whatever they want to call it. Uranus attack? I don't know. I feel like it should be named. That should definitely be like a named ultimate ability. This says, whenever the main cast of Shonen gets hyped to the point where you can't even imagine them losing, is the time where they lose in the worst possible way, being disrespectfully humbled. When you say this, it reminds me of Bleach. You know, I don't want to spoil Bleach, but my god, dude. What happens to Ichigo? Kind of crazy. Gunko begs to be killed, exonerates herself while she dies, and Brook cries. The thing is that, you know, will Gunko be able to snatch back control against Imu? Maybe. You know, we did see that last chapter, we saw that love was one of the most strongest things out there. We don't know Gunko and Brook's relationship, but maybe love is what is needed. Maybe Brook forgives Gunko, and the emotions are just so high that Gunko's like, oh, goodbye, Imu. And then Imu's like, what is this? And there's like pink flowers everywhere coming out. I don't know. I'm just getting crazy with it. But yeah, Gunko fighting back, I think, is going to be the key. Brook's music, I think, could also be key. Drums of Liberation. There's just honestly so many ways to beat Imu and make it look good for Imu at the same time. Like, Imu wins the fight, but they lose the body. They lose Gunko in the process. And, you know, going back to, somebody talked about what? Oh yeah, here it is. Gunko's already fighting back, and Gunko's body limits the amount of power Imu can put in. Maybe Imu does an attack that is so powerful that it does cut the connection. Like, oh, here is Magic Attack 5.0! Bah! And then all of a sudden, Gunko's body starts disintegrating because it's too much power for Gunko's body to handle. That is another way to do it. Imu looks good, but Imu also is forced to leave because they can't stay anymore. So many ways to smooth this over. Imu has to be stronger. We need the stakes to rise. Loki's probably gonna get some hype right now, but I think in the end, an entity that withstood Garp, Rox, Big Mom, Whitebeard, Roger, and Kaido won't just go down without a real fight. He or she has more broken abilities that we haven't seen. Yep, you know, going back to Imu, right? They've only whipped out a shotgun, Domi Reversi, and that's it. We need to see Imu throw hands. We need to see what else is in that book. I think they have a lot there. You know, if you've been chilling for 900 years, you know, if you're the last man standing after all this time, I expect nothing but the best. And if Imu is not strong, brother should have been hitting the gym. You know, forget the flower room and butterflies. Hit the gym and the barbells, man. I feel like it's just going to be like God Valley, where none of the attacks will do anything, and Imu will do something that he believes will be enough to put the God Knights at an advantage of succeeding in their mission of killing or taking the kids of Elbaf, and will leave to handle what's going on in Marie's Raw. Yeah, no attacks work. I'm cool with that. You know, I will say this. I do want Luffy and Loki to land one good blow on Imu. Like, maybe something, like an attack that makes Imu think about Joy Boy and the previous Loki Devil Fruit user. I think that's really hype. You know, it goes back to the whole shonen logic. Like, oh, here's Luffy throwing an attack And kind of like during Fishman Island where you see Ace behind him, like maybe Luffy throws a punch and then he sees Joy Boy. That'd be fire. Like, of course, not as strong as Joy Boy, so there's room to improve. But Imu's like, whoa, that was close. That was insane. But yeah, you know, Imu going back to settle Marie's Raw, I think could be key. And of course, it goes back to Louis Arnaud's message. Maybe the message wasn't for the Straw Hats, but it's for Imu. The whole thing where you cannot linger here for too long, maybe that applies to Imu. Imu was like, hey, God Knights, we have to go. Like, we gotta leave right now or else something bad will happen. That'd also be really cool. Normally, the Straw Hats are the one working against the timer, but this time, maybe it's Imu. Imu's looking around, it's like, oh, guys, we got 3 minutes left. 3 minutes, and then we gotta bounce. For the first time, I can't even think of a dumb theory. There's just so much going on. Especially the fact that we know that Gunko-Imu's biggest fear is Nika. The Holy Land is on fire, last we heard, and their entire plan had basically collapsed thanks to the boat being destroyed. Yeah, it's tough, you know, and that goes back to the glory of One Piece. There's just so many different routes we could spin off of this. Like, I think in this video alone, we talked about 7 different ways Imu leaves the island without looking bad. And any one of those could be true. There's backing for each and every theory. And that is why it's really hard to predict what's going to happen in One Piece. And that's why it's so fun reading it week to week. We're essentially betting on what we want to happen. And I think that's just a lot of fun, especially when we read through the comment section and we just see like the myriad of different ideas and opinions, which, you know, going back to polls, brother, that is why I love the polls, because I am just one guy. I have my own thoughts, my own theories, and I think it's important to take a step back and see what everybody else has to say. That being said, though, y'all, that is it for today's video. Let me know your thoughts on Imu down below. Do you think they're that guy? Do they have crazy taijutsu skills? Are they just a magic user? Or are they nothing? Are they just a regen merchant? Let me know those thoughts down below. And of course, I'll catch you guys in the next couple of days for the next poll video. Peace out and stay safe till then, brothers.